also kind of heard that reflect towards the last time we saw these two teams play. This is the only matchup that so far LFM has been able to claim a win for themselves. The last time they faced Gale Force in part number 1.
You could almost say that they were kind of the gatekeeper. It was, again, down to that match score, and it was Heroes Hearth and Gale Force were in that 4 and 5 spot going into the Western Clash, and Gale Force looks back on that, and you know they wanted that LFM series back because dropping that could have been that potential run, the gatekeeping there towards the Clash. Obviously, again, that is LFM's only win thus far. So that's got to be in the back of your mind somewhere. No matter how confident you might be over the last 2 weeks if you're Gale Force, somewhere that's creeping in the back of your head.
Yeah, and though, you know, maybe the match wins have been a bit of a miss for LFM, one map in Battleground that has worked out consistently for them has been the map of Sky Temple, something they've been prioritizing a lot. So looking at the Battlegrounds here for this matchup, do they have the option of going to the Sky Temple? It will be left up, not where we're going to start off, as Gale Force has selected Cursed Hollow for map number 1. Bans coming in, GFE, rid of BOE. Pretty common ban from them. And then LFM is going to rid of Tomb of the Spider Queen. Now, correct me if I wrote this down wrong, but actually LFM normally is in the higher priority of banning Dragonshire. Granted, Dragonshire and Tomb are common in like kind of play styles overall, so it's not surprising to see that, but I believe this is a mix-up from LFM.
Yeah, LFM, it seems like they're in this constant state of experimentation. We actually saw last week they experimented a little bit with roles in their drafts, and they kind of do the same in their map bans, and you are right, I believe that is one of their most banned, but it's been a varied mix. I think on the other side, though, you look at Gale Force 5-1 on Tomb of the Spider Queen, so it's like, look, we think that we might be okay, but we're just gonna, that is by far Gale Force's best map.
Yeah, it feels like, I'd be willing to argue that. I don't want to say it's at the same level, but, you know, it's much like whenever Tomb of the Spider Queen kind of consumed Europe, you know, those few teams like Dig and Fnatic that really kind of dominated over the map. Gale Force, though, again, I don't feel like it translates directly. They very much are kind of on an upper echelon compared to the rest of North America on just looking at the small scope of Tomb. Here we are, though, Cursed Hollow. A lot of boss control is something we got to be considering. Also, you know, things like the globals. Something maybe a Dahaka showing up. We even got ourselves a fall stat in North America yesterday on Cursed Hollow.
Yeah, it's a rare showing there. As we see the IF there, you can expect that. This is actually something that's always kind of interesting to me is, are you willing to let Medivh through? Because it's not been something that we've seen a lot of out of LFM. And, you know, a lot of times we kind of have these very narrow, I guess, avenues we go down with the draft on the side of LFM. This time, we're going to see a first pick Malfurion. And when I talked to Figgy this week, Dread, he said there might be more changes, a little bit more experimentation that we'll see. I kind of tried to poke a little bit, like, is there any hint you could give me? He just kind of gave me a chuckle. He's like, he said, you'll see it when you see it. He's like, you'll know when you see it. So, first pick Malfurion, see if that doesn't show anything yet.
We aren't there yet. And I wonder how long, you know, it might take. That's kind of interesting, you know. Is that going to be LFM coming out the gate swinging, or is that one of those we've got pocket strategy that we're trying to save when our back's against the wall? Can't help but feel like probably more of mentality number 1 out of those two, just because, again, though you did get the win against Gale Force has that momentum going for them, and they're very much, you know, kind of a formidable team that I would be going, you know, I don't even know if I have the opportunity, if I really want this win, to risk even one loss. I need every single thing that I can possibly get, but we'll see if we see that. Again, the kind of flavor here for LFM within this draft.
But with this was Gale Force's map pick, correct? So LFM first pick. Okay, so we see an avatar coming out from Gale Force. Just so we know, in the previous series between Gale Force and LFM, map number 1 was on Cursed Hollow. LFM picked up that victory. If we're looking at maybe we go down that same path.
History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, man. Could it be something they're looking for here? Gale Force do commit to the avatar. And I'm just going to throw this out once in this broadcast because it's been popular enough within Europe that I think we can talk about it without it sounding too crazy here. There, you know, maybe Samuro somewhere later in this draft with a split push. It's a thing. I don't know if we're going to get it here in North America, but I feel like if any team's willing to bust that out, it's got to be Gale Force Esports, right? Whenever, you know, they're willing to bust out the Vikings in the wild moments of it, it's got a very, I don't want to say similar play style, but kind of, right? And the fact that you got 3 little bodies
I press different buttons, I'm on a different
section.
Clone.
Yeah. It's a little bit in intent, right, of what they make happen. It's in very different kind of burst play styles and kind of tempo, but and the overall play style is rather similar. We see a very high Li Ming there for T. You know, you were dropping some numbers here in the, you know, makeup room when I was getting all beautiful earlier about T.
You're
in
always
that kind
beautiful,
of hero pool.
by the way.
Thank you.
Li Ming has been played 11 times, Tychus 12 times by T. That's 23 out of 39 games that T has had that priority on those 2 heroes. And it's, again, going down that narrow scope of what they want to do. He's also played a lot of one-off heroes. So I think his next played is Cassie at 3 times. There's a couple more at 2. And then it's just a bunch of 1-1-1-1-1 played heroes. It's kind of like the minute they get outside of their comfort zone, they obviously, it's not working for them, so they don't go back to it. They don't try anything outside of the ordinary. So we see the Leeming, we see the Tyrael here. We'll see how that goes. But Arthas hovered here. Arthas normally screams something with Abathur.
Yeah, like an Illidan, typically something very kind of all-in play style here for Gale Force Esports. One thing that I do want to say for LFM, for how critical I am of Tyraels and also the value, and also considering they're at the lower kind of section of North American standings, they still have some pretty impressive play with the Sanctifications, ability to get value out of. It's almost disproportionate to their overall kind of team play style, you know, how well they work with that Tyrael. So I like to pick it up on Curse. Also provides a little bit of boss control, some to maybe stop the momentum of Genji getting those resets. I don't look at that and go, you know, that is the answer, and it definitely is not that kind of flavor we were looking for, but, or at least they were hinting at. But
I think that Tyrael's actually part of half of their wins so far.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm pretty sure it's 5 out of 11 wins on that Tyrael, which isn't bad considering they've only got 10 wins so far this year.
Yeah.
It's a big part of the success that we had. We saw Figgy and team on this battleground. One minor misplay that they had against Tempo Storm the previous week actually cost them a game on Cursed Hollow, but they actually gave Tempo Storm a handful. I mean, you look at that series, it was 3-1. LFM did pick up one, but it was a much more competitive series than meets the eye. Figgy was a big part of that on the Tyrael, but again, last week, we saw a little bit of change up with Draded moving around. I tell you though, Draded for me is probably that hidden gem here in North America that when he played tank last week, I was a little bit sad.
Yeah.
We see the Illidan ban there, Greymane still available, but
I would say, you know, kind of on the note of Draded of being that kind of hidden gem, I agree with you, and I feel like it's for anybody in 2017, I would argue like Hosty was a player that I felt like he's now kind of obviously getting a lot more credit, especially within Simplicity, but I felt like within the rosters that he was on, always that guy kind of actually holding up the team that used to be called superstars. But then there was another player here in North America. Talking Trees is another one that I feel like every single roster that he was performing on, even though the team didn't have the wins, didn't have the results, when you actually look at the kind of impact he was having, he was doing his best. You know, it's a team game. You got to be able to rely on the squad, but he was very much carrying his weight plus some. And it feels like Draded is the kind of team member doing that here for LFM. But when it's on those kind of, you know, not the Warriors typically, you know, backliners, even I'd be willing to take the melee assassins.
I believe Talking Trees might be on one of those teams.
On the open division, yeah.
And he is one of the best flex players. It's interesting. If you actually ever look at his hero pool, obviously that's for a different discussion for a different time, obviously in the near future, actually. But the Illidan banned out, no Greymane picked up. I believe Abathur's normally going to be Udall. Genji will likely be Biggie in this circumstance. Dreadnought last weekend, Biggie in 9 games had 31 kills. That's just over 3 kills a game, which puts him up near the top. And so since he's come back, he has been on that big time role there. So when we look at Biggie, he's been stepping up in a big way, you could say.
His Jaina was really, really significant towards the success that we got of Gale Force Esports last weekend. You know, even with the Ice Barrier plays, going very far in, making the plays. Also, you know, another guy there out of Gale Force that I feel like kind of showed up last weekend had to be Tomster. You know, the backline always there to make sure the team is performing. I mean, we hyped up. I feel like we did a good enough job of the level of play to Fury in terms of the hype to where I don't need to say anything else. I'm like, he got all the praise he deserved in that moment, but Tomster,
he didn't get the MVP this past week.
Yeah, he did not. Actually, I laughed really hard on the inside when I watched the HGC minute and I noticed that they didn't end up getting that. Samuro! Oh my, not where I thought we would see that. Samuro picked up here for LFM and the Tracer. Jay Howe, when you see it,
you'll know.
You'll know.
We get it. You know, and you can credit. It's weird because I casted the Open Division last year. There was a lot of trickle down. When you look at the Pro Division, a lot of that meta trickles down to the Open Division.
Yeah.
But this year, EU is like, we're going to run, EU Open Division, I should say, ran a lot of Samuro to great success. So much so that all of a sudden it's trickling up to the EU Pro scene and now over here to North America. I love the fact that we're getting some Samuro.
You know, trickle down economics, or you can have trickle up meta, you know? It's one way or the other here.
Samesies.
It's samesies. What do we get for the last slot here? Gale Force Esports, probably going to be, you know, whatever the hat target is, likely an off-laner.
Well, you bring up
a primary warrior.
You actually bring up a good point because it was on this battleground at the beginning of the year that we actually saw. This is when B-Kid actually swapped over to a range hero on Cursed Hollow so they could flex around this. So that's actually a very interesting point because this doesn't necessarily have to be a melee.
Normally, it'd be somebody who's going to have to deal with, you know, this kind of split-pushing threat of the all-in that Samuro's going to provide, and the lane threat that's going to have mixed with the tri-lane of the Tyrael, Li Ming, Malfurion split-pushing on one half. It's going to be very high impact here for LFM. I'm going to be honest. I look at this, obviously, it's Dreadnought. It's like one of those, you know, kind of innocent until proven guilty. The other way around from my perspective, you're guilty until proven innocent. It's one of those, you got to kind of prove it here. Samuro, I definitely have a lot more respect for, especially watching it being played in Europe. You know, I'm sitting there going like, actually, this could be a major problem. But LFM, knowing they're up against Gale Force with the recent success, I just sit here and I go, I'm glad we see a mix-up. I just go, ooh, is that really
is this the mix-up you want?
Yeah, is this it? Is this going to be, because there is so much individual demand on the Samuro player to, I mean, you have to, I don't want to say it got to be a Samuro one trick, but you've definitely got to put a lot of hours in the hero to have the impact you want. You know, you can't just pick it up.
You could be grubby.
You could be grubby, but that turns out you have to be one of the best Warcraft 3 players of all time. And I think he even made that role specifically, which is very rare and unlikely that you'll be as good as grubby. Actually, I'll just break it to you, probably not gonna.
One day, maybe? No, probably not. Either way, we're going to kick things off today with Gale Force versus LFM, and Gale Force going to be on the left here in blue, as it's going to be Biggie on that Genji indeed. Michael Udall going to be on the gray main, which means B-Kid actually is going to be on the Abathur, so a bit of a change up there. ETC going to be played by Fury, and rounding it out will be Akaface on Rhaegar.
And the red here looking for their win over Gale Force Esports is going to be LFM Esports. We got a Wear here on that Malfurion, always on that support. We got Swabs coming in on the Samuro. You know, Draded repping it on that Tracer, going to be looking for those pulse bomb picks. Figgy on the front line. I'm so happy when I get to say that. Tyrael. And we got T on that Li Ming. Ooh. And T disappeared pretty quick.
You hate to see it.
You know it's always, I will always respond to that sentence with, it depends on your perspective. I love to see it, you know?
So this is an interesting thing for me right now. So we look at this, right? Tracer's had some minor changes. And so we're going, you know, Tracer rounds at level 1, getting that extra reveal, but just using the gray main to just absolutely beast through this lane after they get that kill makes it so much easier. And that's where, you know, the gray main comes in. And if you are wondering, this is the updated Tracer. This is the weekend where we have the variant and the Tracer changes, most notably in those heroes. This time, game number 1, we're getting the Tracer.
And you see the Samuro doing a lot of work here down with Figgy on the bottom half of the map. Abathur was the kind of solo lane to be able to deal with that. And that pick onto T at level 1. Normally, we look at level 1 kills and you kind of go, it's a setback, right? But that was huge for Gale Force Esports, because you have the Abathur against the Samuro with the amount of pressure that can put onto the front wall and the successful tri-lane that you automatically assumed out of LFM. They had a proper response, but just overextending before the wave even gets there and give up a free front wall. Yes, Gale Force would have likely had that, but they gained essentially 20 to 30 seconds of an advantage already for GFE that they wouldn't have had. And that is not what you want, especially against an Abathur composition with the creativity here from Swabs on Samuro.
And he is here picking up the siege camp, which, again, that time frame that you talked about, controlling the rotations, Gale Force ended up using Greymane and Rhaegar to pick up their siege camp, which you can see being defended here in the top lane by T and Aware on the Li Ming and Malfurion. So now we have the camp that was picked up middle, again, controlling the rotations, getting a little bit further forward. This is an opportunity for Gale Force to take advantage of that Abathur and maybe push in this mid lane. As you can see, Fury lurking in the bush there, and under this spell armor, could potentially just push in, directly take another entire wall.
And if Gale Force can just keep this kind of tempo going up until the 10 mark, it's going to be very good for them at this point in time. Like, it really puts them in a, normally when you look at Abathur compositions, you go, well, look at levels 1 through 9, how are you going to make that happen? But right now, they're constantly dominating over the map, and LFM really can't make the kind of Samuro problem become that problem until 10 hits, right? You need the Illusion Master to kind of dance around and get, you know, at least make the major Samuro plays that we've kind of come to know and love.
Looks like you're already highlighting. We've seen kind of like a little bit of a diversity in terms of Samuro builds. There hasn't kind of been the consistent one because he does have a few talents that kind of adapt to the meta there. So at level 4, going Deflection, Advancing Strengths, grant Samuro and his mirror images 30 physical armor. He has spell armor at that one, but physical armor obviously going against the likes of a Greymane, definitely a good thing to note.
Swab starts the channel, sends the other 2. Get a little bit of damage there on lane. Big impact, able to survive. Swab starts channel number 2. Figgy body blocking off. That's going to be Tribute 1 over to LFM, but it comes at a cost as we take a kind of minute to appreciate what's happening in the northern lane. There is a lot of damage coming out from GFE.
I really feel like this is Gale Force taking a page out of Team 12, and this is something that they did. They ran the Rhaegar and the Greymane in that top, or just kind of rotated them around, kind of ignored the first few, but they've been able to get a significant amount of damage early. But now this is where the clones come in, as well as Figgy. You can just kind of siege this down, and there's too many bodies. What are you going to do here?
Especially with the Tyrael getting multiple, people getting hit with that shielding. You aren't going to be able to wipe that fast enough. The minions staying very much alive. Swaps. Go ahead and use one more. Dash out. Use the stealth, excuse me. He's going to make it out of here. We got 20 seconds out from the next tribute. Gale Force. Throw down that nice mule on that bottom floor. Say thank you for not committing to that.
This is something that I love to see here is the Greymane going with Wiz and Duelist. Clones are easy targets. They don't hit very hard anymore. The new rework Samuro towards the end of last year, they came in with the stealth changes. The clones don't hit as hard, but they're going to be around. So you can get free auto attacks on these all day. If you find them kind of lurking around there, you have more targets to hit. You can keep up your inner beast a little bit, especially in that ranged form for easy targeting. So the Wizened Duelist, obviously if you die, you lose half those stacks, but the potential ceiling of that talent could be way too much to deal with. But again, that physical armor at level 4 for Samuro might be enough.
It's one of the most, probably high impact spells or talents more so in Heroes of the Storm, Wizened Duelist. It was definitely the older version, even still here with the kind of reworked version. Whenever it sits at its max stacks, Greymane just escalates so quickly in terms of his lethality on so many situations. Also the split push trade-off with the Samuro, it helps in that avenue our opportunities as well.
Right now, Gale Force holding here in the mid lane. Not enough sieging pressure behind that Night Camp that was coming in. So Gale Force still with a slight advantage. They also have the only kill in this game so far. Tribute's tied up 1-1. You can see the next Tribute obviously at the top right. So Gale Force, they're going to try and double down on this. Potentially get 10, potentially get another Tribute. Also have that Siege Camp. I imagine if they use that Siege Camp to push out that top lane, maybe rotate back down, make a play on that boss at the bottom left.
I wouldn't be surprised if LFM just flat gives this up, but the fact that LFM postured 3 bodies down on bottom after picking up the Giant Camp and now making the rotation up to what seems like an extremely unrealistic Tribute, I feel like is a major setback. That bottom 4 would have been a very easy siege opportunity for them, but instead, Figgy kind of a bit on an island for now. Draded willing to giving a kill on a big impact. It's a huge win for them, but then now they're still going to make the rotation up.
They committed a lot to it. Let's see if we actually get a Greymane clone as soon as 10 hits.
Gale Force just lost somebody and they're going to start this boss?
Well, they're like, all right, Tracer and Leeming are both bottom. We should be fine here, but are they fine? Let's see if it gets sniffed out here. Level 10 was picked up. Ultimate Evolution was picked up. No clone. That is if you're not getting much out of it, that's almost a waste of time.
Figgy's still without his 10s here. All of LFM, conveniently for that matter, are. There we go, rounding out the hooks. Draded going to go ahead and start this channel. Man, there was so much back and forth there. I think the biggest thing here, if I was to kind of highlight anything, is definitely from Gale Force Esports. That kind of, decision-making to start the boss versus the Tribute. What are we going to do with that 10 spike and not getting any of those and getting the pick on bottom on big impact, getting caught out? That is something that is, kind of compared to that consistency that we want to see from them, that recent success that they've had, that is very much the opposite of it, decision-making wise at least.
Start boss, leash boss, start boss, leash boss. Start boss, leash boss.
It's the, classic Cursed Hollow problem here.
You taking this? Nah. You gonna take this? Nah, me neither.
Well,
you sure? Maybe. Nah, never mind.
For anybody wondering, what was Gale Force Esports thinking? They think, okay, LFM can't commit to this Tribute, but Big Impact was extremely far out on the bottom half with that kind of in mind. But either way, beyond that, they were assuming they were going to get that rotation up. They're either going to commit to the Tribute while you take the boss with your 10's advantages, or you get the boss with your 10 advantage and get the Tribute. And it's close enough up that you can kind of threaten them off of both at the same time. Get a 2-for-1, and it's a huge advantage. Team moving up a little bit too far. Going to need a Dragon Blade already reset there for Big Impact. Is this boss going to be picked up? Figgy, does he go with the Eldruin's follow-up? No, he will not commit to it.
That play by Biggie, though, getting that extra damage on his level 4 at the end of his Swift Strike landed perfectly, and you could thank the Abathur Mine for revealing T there. Landed it perfectly, got the hat just in time. That was perfect execution, perfect teamwork, and a lot of that goes to B-Kid there, getting that hat on there, making sure to get that extra burst damage before LFM. Just excellent communication, excellent teamwork there by Gale Force.
Yeah, and we were talking about Big E and the impact that he kind of had for the squad last weekend, and with how many kills he was able to achieve for the group, able to show right there, I feel like that kind of improvement from him as a player. Figgy out a little bit of far, uses the Sanctification. Going to get roots out here from Aware. Big Impact coming back in. Figgy going to give over reset 1. Twilight Dream did end up going down. We get the recall from Draded, but Biggie, you know he wants these kills. He's going to go in. Does he go for Aware? This could be so many resets.
Gets onto the Aware. There's the clone, or excuse me, the hat again that's going to supply that. Gets out of danger just in time with that reset on the Swift Strike. This boss still sitting at about 30–40% health. Not going to get a whole lot more out of this, but they're going to double down and try and get this siege camp as well to really try and put pressure onto this camp, on this keep wall. Dreadnought, we're looking at Curse Point as well.
Yeah, it's a Curse Point, and Gale Force feels comfortable because they have the boss pushing on the bottom half. They got 20 seconds out on the trib. They got 13 talent tier advantage. It's very likely that it's going to be their tribute to pick up. At this point in time, there's only top boss, so they can assume that LFM is likely going to make that transition and be able to start that for themselves.
I just wonder how much, with this composition, how much they'll try and push into that bottom lane. It's risky, I think, if they try and commit too much to it. But they'll definitely have the curse to kind of get behind that.
This is very interesting from LFM. Normally, when you'd expect that many rotations to the bottom half, you'd at least put more pressure towards the minions on the top half, or at least, again, that boss again. But they kind of just posed around in the middle lane for a little bit there. Samuro did make the rotation up just to get the experience, but they're still miles out from the 13. Not much gained here for LFM. Gale Force, though, very different tale for them. This middle fort is going to not last too long here. The question is how many keeps beyond this point. I'm expecting a minimum 1 keep, I think, here for Gale Force. It's difficult, and I know I might be asking a lot, but I'm expecting, you know, pull the trigger, get the mosh pit, get 1 kill, and then after the curse ends, this keep goes down. I
mean, the minute you see T use a wave of force, that's when you know that you can kind of pull the trigger on that. Fury's just hoping that they have some reason to use that, and if you're on the side of LFM and your T, you cannot use that. You 100% have to hold that. Unless you're confirming a kill and you're going to get a reset, you have to hold that for a potential mosh pit. We're going to see he's stepping forward. See, Fury right there was looking to get Li Ming in that, unable to do so.
Twilight Dream goes down, ends up hitting both of the Genjis here, and that's a lot of damage on a big impact. He's trying to cut out, no deflect. He's almost one shot. Swab's trying to get the track down. Not going to have enough damage there. Use the Illusion Master, makes it back out to the back one.
You can see T right there. The position of T was key to make sure that Fury could not go in it. You could see all the members of LFM coming forward. T had to rotate from the bottom end of that to make sure that he did not get caught in that for fear of the turnaround. Heads up play by T. Good awareness to make sure not to get caught in that, but Gale Force, good disengage as well.
Yeah, and they push Gale Force back off of that middle keep. So pretty big win for them. Gale Force, though, with rounding the 16 talent tiers and double mines being triggered by LFM, there's no way they can kind of go, hey, you know, are you going to maybe want to give us this boss for free pre-16? That'd be great. Gale Force is like, not with that kind of information available on the map. Thank you very much.
Well,
Zone them off.
You're talking about bosses. We're not seeing Holy Ground this time. It's been one of the map where it's generally had higher priority. Instead, we're still continuing to go down a different route, which
I don't know if you've noticed, since the Eastern Clash and Western Clash has kind of unfolded, and I was praising all of North America for how much, you know, Holy Ground we were getting, it died out real quick last week. Halfway through, we just started getting we just didn't get Holy Ground. After Holy Ground, getting the Law and Order.
Boom, boom. Another really Swift Strike for Biggie has obtained basically maximum value at that level 4 talent, hitting just about at the end. You know, you bring in Li Ming and you bring in a Tracer. Taking down this mage here is incredibly difficult to do. They are committing to this. B-Kid already with the clone. It's going to be on a Genji clone, not a Grey main, which means they're looking to make big-time plays happen.
Yeah, B-Kid goes in, zones off T a little bit, 50% HP or lower there. That's going to make it hard for him to move up and get that interrupt. Twilight Dream ends up being used. Pulse Bomb landing, Ancestral Healing coming out from Akaphase onto Fury. Will keep him up. Power Slide goes in. Not going to pull the trigger yet on that mosh pit. Biggie, unable to hit the Sanctification. Go for the throw, gets the first reset, but T finds one for himself. Onto that mosh, or excuse me, onto the ETC, but then look at this turnaround. Gale Force Esports brings out the Dragon Blade. Big impact, gets reset 1 there as he goes back in for T, finds that, and will get swabs to boot. 4 for 1, maybe even 5 for 1, as Gale Force Esports explodes open that fight.
There's a possibility they might be able to just dive core. The Greyman is still alive. We don't have Adrenal Overload, and they don't really have a whole lot of resources. Michael Udall kind of low, Akaphase low on mana, and it seems like they're just going to back out. And I think that they could have got some core damage, maybe done a little bit more, but the turnaround here by Gale Force all starts again. You can see B-Kid going in, but it's all about Big E making the big play after Michael Udall goes in to kind of reinitiate.
And they're right here.
Yeah, Michael Udall and Big E are like, let's go in. I've got this reset.
That was an amazing job there from Big Impact and Mike Udall with that go for the throw, immediate initiation. There was a great recall from Draded, actually. Dodged a lot of the damage coming in from the Swift Strike, but it was just too much there from Gale Force Esports with the high, you know, kind of explosive opening that they have with those and the synergy they just displayed there. LFM, though, they do have the tools to deal with that later on after the top boss being picked up and Gale Force got the trip.
Will there be a later? Because we're about to have boss play at the bottom left, and that bottom keep is low. If I'm Gale Force going around this time, Dreadnought, we saw the Genji clone. Obviously, it ended up working out in the end, but only because of a turnaround fight where LFM kind of stepped out a bit too far. But if you're trying to end the game, you kind of hold that for the gray main to get on the core. And with that keep being so low, this is a tough spot, I think, for LFM to be in here.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult. And it is the kind of last of the remaining win conditions, too, when looking at Gale Force, because the tribute timing, they need 2. How far out that is with the timing to the 20 spike. This is realistically the biggest advantage they're going to get, you know, without kind of hitting that awkward Cursed Hollow limbo that we can experience from time to time. I'd be looking for lethal. Definitely want to get 1 to 2 kills with this. So, again, T on that Li Ming trying to catch her out, and then anybody else, if you can find Fury to get a mosh pit, you know he's going to be trying to pull that trigger there. Aware has done a very good job of keeping a Fury in check throughout this entire game, though, with his roots and his Twilight Dreams.
But the threat of it has very much been there. There
There's
he goes.
the
There's the mosh pit. It's going to be interrupted immediately. And now you can see Swabs. He's trying to live. Michael Udall and team eats the pulse bomb. They back up with the boss already on the core, Dread.
Yeah, it's going to be on the core. Shielding on the core now going to be falling. Fully removed. Gale Force completely back out here. Do not even question if they can move up towards this. Normally I'm critical of this type of play because I think there was enough to kind of poke around, poke and prod for the 20 advantage. But I just want to, I'm going to take that back purely based on the fact that Gale Force Esports, they just acted quickly. Right? And that is something that is not very common from them. They hit a moment where they're like, yeah, this is not worth the call. And rather than kind of dabbling and just sitting and not being overly proactive, they're like, what else can we make happen in the match? Back out, paint it blue. It is, whenever you give up a win condition, if that was quote-unquote a win condition, you could argue that's a misplay. But this is still safe with how big of an advantage we see from Gale Force Esports. And it was quick. And that is, I think, the biggest key there is the speed at which they made it.
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head just moments before all that unfolded was you kind of got to fear the next tribute timing and stuff like that. That limbo that you fall in, that tribute was spawning. So they made a quick call. They made a decisive call around that. So now with that, they don't fall into that limbo because there's no way that LFM can get to 20 by the time the next curse hits.
And look at this. Gale Force, they can get any objective on the map right now with 20 advantage. They aren't just blind capping it. This is, again, very different for Gale Force Esports to not just kind of pick up a mercenary because they can. They are just going to wait for the objective, get double split pressure with the double catapults between mid and bottom, and then look to move up, take the tribute, curse point, fight with the 20 advantage. This is very calculated and clean. And though it isn't something you haven't seen for the first time ever, it's not like we get this every single game, right? This is clean here from GFE.
Abathur, all he has to do is have one of those front minions, press W, and then it's instantly blown up the entire wave, and to allow those catapults to push after the curse is picked up, obviously, because 1 damage. Figgy, this entire time, Dreadnought, has been stuck on an island.
Once that sanctification drops, big impact backed out to make sure he gets value out of that, you know, level 4 talent you were talking about before. Mike Udall starts the channel. Here's the curse. And without Figgy, without 20s, and with only 1 keep left to stand, still mercenaries pushing him mid and top. Things look grim here for LFM. If somehow maybe they can get a pick onto big impact in some way, shape, or form, that might be a way to recover. But otherwise, Gale Force, they're just going to march onto the core.
I think they should. They have the gray main. They have the gray main, well, the clone, if they want it. We'll see if they try and make that happen under the realm of this spell armor. LFM on their last stand. The clones go down, and now Gale Force moving forward. Minions are here. Catapults approaching the core. Mike Udall trying to find a kill there onto Draded as well.
Right, interrupt there from Fury, able to get the power slide in, ends up dropping the mosh pit, locking down 2, and that is going to give 1 reset, 2 reset. Gale Force Esports now looking towards the core. Game number 1 here, ladies and gentlemen, in pretty dominant fashion. 12-2 in kills. Going over to GFE. At the very end there, I want to shout out to Fury. Had a really nice knockback to interrupt the Twilight Dream, even though we don't have the cool little timers anymore. I was able to catch that one, and it was going to be a 4-man. Again, Aware's really good with his Twilight Dreams. They're just not maybe always at the most time-sensitive kind of situations. But for the most part, you know, he's doing his best. But Fury, it's Fury. One of our best warriors here in North America.
Easily. And that ETC has kind of been a staple of his repertoire for quite some time, and he made it work there. And the thing is, there's a point of, if you lose in this situation in your Gale Force, right, you're looking like, oh, ETC never pressed R, right? He never casted the mosh pit, but it's a 2-minute cooldown. You can't just use it for free. And I think it was one of those things, the threat alone keeps different people honest. You can't get the calamities that you think that you want to get in. So trying to get those blow-up kills, you can't use that as aggressively if you're on Li Ming as T. The same thing about stepping up. You kind of got to be a little bit more careful. Those are your only 2 interrupts. So Fury didn't have to do a lot. The threat of Fury alone on ETC, I think, was a big factor. But the play of B-Kid over on Apather, as well as Biggie on Genji, a big part of the success in game number 1. And that was pretty clean victory.
Yeah, I think the one thing that stood out for me overall playstyle-wise that was beyond the couple decision-making, some of the things I brought up in the game itself, was Big Impact's ability to identify isolated targets and how fast he acted on them. Again, that kind of cutthroat mentality, the speed at which those decisions are being made, he's not messing around. That was one mine being hit when he goes for the Li Ming, and you'd be like, okay, a Li Ming, you already got 1-man advantage. You know it's a 5 versus 4 if they're facing that whatsoever, and a Li Ming hits a mine, and you know you can get a lot of value in that trade. That's probably worth the commit no matter what. But then you look at bottom with Figgy in the 1 versus 1, catching that Tyrael isolated with that amount of time, seeing the sanctification dropped. I don't know why he didn't Eldrunes over the wall, but he just goes, okay, well, if you aren't going to throw the Eldrunes, I'm just going to back out, act like I'm not interested, back to the kill, right? And it was that kind of cutthroat mentality, that Big Impact we highlighted his play last week. It's still showing here, but I think it's all the members of Gale Force are showing a little bit of this and that here and there kind of peppered into their play, and it's a lot of the reason we see those kind of moments of improvement. There's still obviously areas to grow. I feel like even in that last game, you know, you can look at a couple, but it's looking good here for GFE.
I think good is an understatement because I was really digging into the stats this week, coming into this weekend, and I look at Gale Force and I'm like, where do they lie? Because they generally get a lot of kills. They're ranked high, but it's always been about they're trading a lot. They die enough. They still have a positive in terms of the kill-death ratio, but it's starting to distance itself a little better. And then I looked at it, kills per game. They had 12 that game. Total right now, there's 3 Korean teams all at the top to be expected in terms of kills per game. 4th, Tempo Storm. 5th in the world right now is Gale Force Esports. 12 kills this game. That number is going to go up even more. We'll see if they can continue that success.
Yeah, and we're going to see where we'll be continuing that success here for Gale Force Esports, or maybe LFM if they can turn things around so far. Gale Force Esports going to be sending us over to the, you know, not very unexpected Dragonshire here. You take away Tomb of the Spider Queen, we're going to go ahead and pick up the next small battleground here.
It allows them to get a lot of skirmishing in. This is also another map where we've seen Genji excel. We've also seen potentially the Greymane, the Jaina, things that Gale Force likes to play. They all excel on this battleground in different ways. Greymane, however, on this battleground in general, actually has a pretty poor win rate, but I think it's just a matter of where does he fit in drafts. I think it's something like low 30% on this battleground or mid 30%. And I think that when we look at that, it's more of, is it a compositional thing? Because if you're leaving kind of Greymane to kind of do it all while you flex around that, it doesn't work out that well. But the way that Gale Force plays and on this battleground, if they want to mix in the Greymane, I think it fits their playstyle to this battleground very well. Same thing for the Jaina. And again, I think that Genji definitely is going to be a threat. However, on the other side, the biggest threat is Draded on that Genji. We saw the Tracer didn't work out that well. He has been pretty good on that Genji himself, averaging about 3.5 kills a game. It's kind of like the bright spot there. His Genji and Greymane are kind of his go-to heroes. Would like to see a change for LFM in that round.
Yeah,